What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Rascal Reacts, where you ask for my 2 cents and I give you a nickel. So, before I get into the GB part, a quick little word just about this podcast, right? The Two Sides of the Game podcast with AWAX and Big Tone. I've been critical in the past, and some of that I stand on, but it's from kind of a more juvenile mindset, and some of it I probably didn't have the whole story, right? Just to be quite honest. But one thing I've never denied, right, with either one of them, for one with Wax is that dude's top five easy, probably top three best rappers to ever come out of Contra Costa County. Definitely the hardest working and most consistent. And that's saying something when you consider, EXO and the mob figures and, Woody and East Coco and Sav It Out. Like there's a legacy of music out of Contra Costa County, and he's certainly right there at the top. But he brings something that I think is pretty dope to the podcast. Not all great rappers are great podcasters. I think we see that often, and I don't know. I think it's a refreshing, space for him to be in, and he definitely contributes and moves the conversation in different directions. And then in terms of tone, right? Uh, I'm thankful, and I've been thankful that he is an example of somebody who has evolved in their music. Right when I first met him, was around him. That was early 2006. I was just home from prison, and it was the height of the gangbanging rap, right? And so now, almost 20 years later, right, he's been public about his growth and his priorities, and he talks about different stuff, as you should, 20 years down the road from when you were talking before, right? And I think him doing that publicly is just a good look, right? It's a good example to everybody, right? Of growth and maturity. And so and he also brings something dope to the podcast, and he's built a strong following, like on other social media platforms, for his little nuggets of wisdom and encouragement and that kind of stuff. And so anyways, it's great, right? I really appreciate the podcast. If you guys haven't checked it out, I suggest you do, regardless of where you're from or regardless of even your interest in rap music. They're just dope conversations, and this is no exception at all, right? There is a ton of stuff. I could do a hour long reaction to this, and still have stuff to cover. So I would suggest you guys check it out. I actually have a whole bunch of timestamps that I'm not gonna go to, right? But if if you guys are into the supernatural stuff, which I know a lot of you guys do, because I get asked questions about it all the time, go to like 15 minutes in, and there's like a good 20-minute conversation, right, about the supernatural, the paranormal, the afterlife, and all that. That's a dope conversation. They talk about Woody and Jelly Roll collaborating, which I had never even heard of, right? So that's in there, and then just tips on just kind of elevating in life and whatnot. But what I want to focus on, right? You guys see the thumbnail, is GB got swooped up recently. This is like a month old interview, but it's still after GB got out. And GB had gotten swooped up along with a bunch of other people in a state raid, right, in Merced County, where they said they grabbed a whole bunch of Northerners for a whole bunch of stuff. And that got a lot of attention, him being included in that because of his status, not just as a rapper, but also as a figure in the city of Merced and in the area, right? He owns businesses, he does community stuff. He's very visible in his backyard, even aside from the music, right? The music is the platform that kind of gave him a bit of the springboard, I guess. But he's really out there, right? And in some healthy and positive ways. And so, of course, they threw him in the mix, and he wasn't in there long, right? I think they got him on a probation violation, and he was out within a couple days. But he talks about it a little bit, and I'm not gonna play everything that he says about everything. But one point I want to highlight is about what law enforcement was doing to slander his name, right? So let's get into that, and I'll give you guys my thoughts on it.
Having a lot of back and forth going on between me and law enforcement back in Merced County. Um, I don't know why, but you feel me? I'm like a big focus of theirs.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So they've been fucking with me for years, for whatever reason. And that there was so I don't know if it was PD gang task. They was going around school to school, basically giving information on gang recruitment and gang activity in Merced.
So for those that maybe are unaware, right, this is pretty common, at least in California. I'm sure it's common in other places too, but law enforcement has determined that it is their job, right, to go around and inform the community about gangs, right? So they will do presentations at schools, they will do presentations for parent groups and for nonprofits and all this other stuff. And it's normally the gang task force. A lot of guys, a lot of times they'll find somebody who used to be affiliated and kind of flipped and now is working with law enforcement, right, to drive the message home. You know what I mean? A little more credibility, I guess. And and they'll go around and they'll talk this. These are the gangs in the area. Here's pictures of them. This is what the graffiti looks like. This is what they're dressed like. And oh, by the way, parents, teachers, clergy, everybody, if you see people that resemble this, just let us know, right? Very convenient. Just call us, and we're here to help. And so what he's describing does happen frequently.
Pretty much was they was going around school to school in Merced and giving this presentation to the parents and the kids, and they was like, this is what a gang is, this is what they do, and this is GB. Wow. He's like the fucking biggest gang member in Merced. If your kid listens to GB, that's a red flag. It's a big no-no. He's this big fucking gang recruiter and this and that. Whatever they was saying. So I've always known for them to like run my name through the mud.
So just think about that for a second, right? And again, if you're not familiar with GB, just look around. Hear, listen to his interviews on multiple platforms. Look at his social media. Hear what other people say about him. Talk to people from Merced, right? GB is, he's a homeboy, of course, right? It's not, rocket science, and some of that is reflected in his rap. But early on in this conversation, him and Tone and Wax were all talking, and it was mentioned how, law enforcement and people are just waiting for you to slip up just once, right? So that they can wipe out all else that you've done. And that is the definition of a hater, really, right? Somebody who is just waiting for you to slip up so that they can highlight how you slipped up to undermine all the not slipping up that you've done. Whether it's in recovery, like, oh, that fool relapse, told you he's always going to be a dope fiend, or in crime, right? Oh, that dude's been out of jail for a long time, but then look, he got picked up for something, because once a criminal, always a criminal, And there are people like that out there. And in particular, a lot of law enforcement is like that. Because I think for them to acknowledge that people can change, it undermines their whole theory of anybody who's a gang member is an existential threat to the community and to society and needs to just be eradicated. But also that people can change without their help, right? I did a video on the debriefing process on the homie hangout a while back, and it's the same mentality, right? Of, hey, well, if you're really not with the criminals anymore, then you will have no problem cooperating with us and being on our side. That's how you show that. But if you're not willing to cooperate with us, that's because you're still in the pocket of the gangs and the crimes, which is anything further from the truth, right? You can absolutely move on in your life, get off the block, stop doing reckless shit without having to betray people or tell on them or partner with law enforcement or anything else. In fact, most people who kind of grow up and grow out of certain behaviors, that's how they do it, right? And that shit bothers law enforcement. And so I think that's what's happening here with GB. But So let's continue.
You know, which it doesn't bother me. You feel me? This shit happens all the time when you're successful doing what you do. But when I heard that, they was like, nah, like they giving like a whole presentation about you and
That's
for
ridiculous.
an hour and going from school to school. I was like, at that point, that's like personal. You feel me?
Yeah.
So I tapped in with my lawyer and I was like, hey, bro, like this is what they doing. And they was like, send somebody to go see if they really doing that. So I sent somebody. I was like, hey, go check it out. You feel me? Because if I pop out, they obviously not going to present nothing. And yeah, they was doing exactly what I heard. And I sent the footage to my lawyer, and he just put a cease and desist. You feel me? For a defamation.
Yeah.
For to the city of Merced, the mayor, the PD, the sheriff's department, and that's all this last shit was. You feel me? Is just
So, and I want to make this point because I don't know that everybody will quite see it this way, but I challenge you to consider it. That is community service right there. That's community work, what GB's doing, right? He has the resources. It's the blessing and the curse, right? Because he has the name, because he has the popularity, because he has the business ventures, because of all of that, he also has the resources to have lawyers and that sort of stuff that most folks in the neighborhood don't have. He also is going to be the one that they're going to do the presentation about, as opposed to, some other particular folks in the neighborhood who there's just not as much bang for the buck when you put them on blast. But holding them accountable in a legal, responsible, non-reckless, non-violent way, right? That's a benefit to everybody, right? Because if you're not going to be allowed to do it with GB because that's defamation, and he has lawyers that will hold you accountable, that makes it easier for the next kid or the next guy that came home from prison, and all of a sudden he's in all the presentations. Hey man, the Joe just got out of, back in the days the whole thing was he just got out of Pelican Bay, right? So, Joe just got out and watch out for him. He's a gangster. And maybe he doesn't have all those resources and that kind of stuff, but the precedence is still set. If you can't defame him, you can't defame me either, right? And just letting it be known, we're not as a community, right? And north south, that's not relevant. I think in this is gang influenced communities and individuals trying to grow beyond the circumstances that they were born into and caught up in, and maybe some of the poor decisions that they've made, but in a way that is community based, not law enforcement based, right? And that happens everywhere, right? All races, all neighborhoods, all, so this isn't a northern thing, in particular. I think this roadmap exists for everybody, but letting them know that, hey, as a community, we're not going to just be subservient anymore, right? A lot of times when we come up, it's, hey, bro, just avoid law enforcement. Don't piss off law enforcement. Try to stay out the way. Just, it's cops and robbers, man. And we're the robbers, and we're going to try to stay out of the way. And I get that. It seems to have changed this generation with everybody jumping on social media, bragging about being robbers. But you guys know what I mean. That mentality has been around for a long time, right? It's very common in immigrant communities. It's very common in low-income communities across the board, right? You don't trust the system. You don't engage with the system. You just try to create the best life you can without interacting with them. And it's important for folks to take a stand and be like, nah, you know what, man? You're not just going to punk us. You can't just do any old thing that you want to. And not everybody has the name or the resources to do that. But I think it's admirable when those who do have that stuff actually use it in this way. So this is, that work right there, that's for the people, in my opinion.
defamation. When all else fails, when they can't get you for shit,
assassinate your character.
Yeah, they're just like, fuck it, let's just make them look bad. You feel me?
Yeah.
Let's just paint them as this fucking.
I think part of it's like what you said too. Like there's elections coming up, and easy headline, anything that's an easy headline, like being one of the biggest faces coming out musically out of there, if not the biggest face, you're an easy target for someone to try and get reelected or elected into office.
And I would suggest, like I said, you guys watch this. I'm gonna show you one more clip just because I feel like Tone said exactly what I have been saying for years before I came on YouTube and for my entire time on YouTube. And it's central to the Homie Hangout platform and ideology. And so, and I'm not saying that that's why he said it. I think he said it because it's the truth. And he's not the only one. But the more we say it, I think the more it'll resonate. So pick up on this one last little point and then
that's
turn a negative to a positive,
and you
brother.
know one thing I try to highlight, bro, what we're doing, at least with me, like we come from different. That's why this podcast is called Two Sides of the Game. You know, we come from different sides of the politics. You know, whatever. But you could still be proud of where you're from. You could still be in this environment. I could still rock with the same brothers that I've been rocking with, and I could still be professional. I could still move this way. You can't just label me because I come from this and I'm still around this as that. Like, there's way more to this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you can't just sit there and say that they're just one type of homie, one type of individual. Oh, you're a homie. You're just a fucking, evil fucking criminal, whatever they want to paint the picture.
Yeah.
There is more than one way to be a homie. You guys that know me from before YouTube know I've been saying this, right? It's the unfortunate reality in the hood is there's gonna be some dudes that are hitters. There's gonna be some dudes that want the quick bucks. There's gonna be some dudes that just are gonna make some reckless decisions and they're gonna do some time. And that's fine, right? Like, we don't want people to do that, but that's the nature of the environment, right? Some people are gonna go that route. Other people are not, right? And then even still, some are going to be involved in a lifestyle and mature out of it, grow out of it. Their priorities shift a little bit. That doesn't mean you're betraying everybody, right? That means you're maturing, you're elevating in life. You are going to be around to raise your kids instead of the streets having to raise your kids the way that you were raised because you're locked up somewhere or you're dead. Like, this is all healthy shit. And the more people with platforms share that, what I think is a straight truth, right? And normalize that, I think the better for the community. You know, it's exactly right, man. There's more than one way to be a homeboy. So on that note, man, you asked for my 2 cents, I give you a nickel. I really suggest you guys go check this out. I'm gonna link to it obviously in the description of this video, and stay tuned, man. I got more content coming, of course.